Greetings, I'm Professor Seth Frey, and welcome to the demo of Module 6. So today we're going to, on the Python side, we're going to play with strings and string functionality, and we're going to play with some code flow, some flow control, or if statements. So that's all on the Python side, but we're going to apply that to some questions. We're going to ask questions. A lot of what we've done is kind of looking at social media, looking at new technology, looking at the internet, but we're also going to use we can also use the internet to record the past. So we're going to go a little old-timey and ask about Shakespeare, the works of William Shakespeare. So everything's on the internet, including everything Shakespeare ever wrote. We're going to run one line of code after you run the boilerplate. I've prepared some code for you that's going to pull down, in one line of code, everything Shakespeare ever wrote. And we're going to search through it using simple Python operations to ask two questions. What's the longest word Shakespeare wrote? And what's the longest palindrome? You know what a palindrome is? Like race car. It's a word that's spelled the same forwards and backwards. Now, what does this buy us? Well, maybe you have some know-it-all friends that you bring up some obscure subject and you think no one's ever heard about it and you get to hold forth, but they already know all about it and they start telling you stuff about it and it's obnoxious. It's obnoxious knowing that person unless you're that person, in which case it's great. So by knowing this stuff, we're going to make you that person. I think it's great. So how are we going to do this? It's nice to talk about, but how do we pin this down? We're going to use Project Gutenberg. It's this amazing site that collects tens of thousands of old books. So they're available free online if you have an ebook reader and you want free books or you like reading classics. You can go to Project Gutenberg and just search and search and search and find all kinds of amazing literature. Now, every book available on Project Gutenberg is available in like an EPUB format. I'm just going to click, let's see, I think they've got like a top 100. What do we have here? Let's see, browse catalog, bookshelves, categories. Let's check out category. There's a bookshelf. Children's bookshelf. Do they have a top? Let's do some history. Okay, some biographies. Who do we want the biography of? Napoleon Bonaparte. Yeah, sure, why not? Oh no, this is by Napoleon. He wrote some histories of Julius Caesar. All right, great. So we have a lot of options here, a lot of varieties the book comes in. If you have a Kindle or some other ebook reader, you would download these and you would get these books in that form. But you can also get every book in plain text form. So here we have gutenberg.org/files/ a bunch of numbers, which are the ID of the book. And then we have this giant text file. You've encountered text files before. They're the simplest kind of file. And if we just scroll down, here's the entire book in a text file. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And now, if we put on our Python goggles, our code goggles, this whole book is just a string. It's a single string. The line breaks are a type of character. Instead of an E character or a B character or a G character, there's a line break character. It's just yet another character in the string of characters, and we can represent this entire book as a single string. All right, and we're going to do that. After we run our boilerplate code, here's what we get to do. We take the URL, a different URL. This is going to be the URL of a book called The Complete Works of William Shakespeare. Complete Works of William Shakespeare, there it is. How long is it? Boy, it's pretty long. It goes on and on and on. We can find table of contents. Here we are. This is everything he wrote, all the sonnets, all the plays, his lyric verse down here at the end, some disputed stuff, some old stuff. We don't have the best sense. We don't know all the things Shakespeare did or didn't write. There's a lot of conflict. People make their whole careers out of pinning this stuff down. So this URL variable is a string. And my function I wrote for you, Gutenberg URL to list, you'll be able to put in the URL as long as it ends in, starts with www.gutenberg.org and ends, with this sort of .txt. If it points to the text file of a book, You can plug it in here, and this is going to go to the internet. What are we going to get? We're defining here a variable called all of Shakespeare. What's all of Shakespeare? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to slice the first 100 characters and the last 100 characters. And here we are. This file starts with a bunch of boilerplate. I do you the favor of skipping all that boilerplate. And it ends with a bunch of boilerplate. I do you the favor of skipping all that boilerplate. So the book starts with, right here, the sonnets, blah, 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 and it goes on, starting at sonnet 1, going on and on and on. We're going to skip all this end stuff. And here we'll get the end of, is this Venus and Adonis? Who's this? What's the last thing in there? No, I don't think. Is it Venus and Adonis? What's the last thing in this book? Oh yeah, Venus and Adonis. It ends with the final lines of Venus and Adonis. Is that what we're seeing? Yeah, the sonnets. We start with the same thing and we end with the end of that tragedy. Okay, so some stuff you've heard of is in there. Romeo and Juliet's in there. I dug around. It took me a while playing with the indices, but Romeo and Juliet, the play, starts at character 705,000 and goes on until character 730,000. It's about 25,000 words long, about 30,000 characters long. We run it, and there it is. Now, what representation did I use? I actually didn't use a string. I broke the string up into a list of words. So we're representing the complete works of William Shakespeare as a list. And if I was going to take one of the indices of that list, I would get a word from one of the plays. And if I was going to take one of the indices of one of those strings, of one of those words, I would get one of the characters in that word. So we could kind of do indexes of indexes. We can pull a word out of a play, and we can pull a character out of a word. Because we're working with we're working with strings that are in lists. And there it is, about 25. This is a list, 25,000 words long. So we've talked about, like, what does it mean to have an ordered collection? What are examples of things that have an inherent order? And I've given you some examples of things that have inherent order. Houses on the side of a street, or days in the week. But words in a book have an inherent order. Anything we read has an inherent order, so it's convenient to store in the form of a list. And so here we are, this translation between thinking in Python in this case, and things in the real world that we actually interact with. So here's a fun question already. William Shakespeare is this prolific artist, this prolific writer, who had a huge impact. He actually invented hundreds of words that you use every day. You credit a lot of your daily speech to words he invented out of nowhere, because English wasn't rich enough for him, and apparently not for any of us, because he made things we use all the time. So, I don't know, how much did he actually write? Well, let's find out. Let's just take the length of that list. Looks like he wrote almost 1 million, just short of 1 million words. Maybe he should have picked it up a little bit, huh? Break that barrier. So how about this? What's the longest word in Shakespeare? This is more complicated code. I'm going to walk you through it slowly. You don't have to be able to write this code. You don't have to be able to reproduce it. I'm just showing you kind of what's possible. You have to be able to run it. And it's nice if you're able to skim it. I've hopefully given you meaningful enough variable names so you can kind of get the gist of this code without knowing how it specifically works, or that you can follow my explanation of how it specifically works now as I record this. So we're going to create two sort of dummy variables, placeholder variables, longest word length, longest word. And we're going to start them off as nothing. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go entry by entry through that list, word by word through that list. And the current longest word we have is the empty string, because we're just going to start kind of at the smallest possible answer. Whatever the longest word is probably longer than 0. So we're going to start at 0 and try to go longer. We're going to go to the very first entry, and we're going to ask, okay, what do we have here? Let's say, it's the. I think it's the in the sonnet. So we have the. How long is the? How long is the? the is 3. It's three characters long. Okay. Is 3 bigger than longest word length? Well, longest word length is 0. 3 is bigger than 0. So we're going to run this code. And we're going to assign the as the longest word in Shakespeare for now. Now, we've only looked at one word in Shakespeare, so kind of by default, it's the longest word. We're going to store in longest word, the word the. We're going to store in longest word length, the length of the, which is 3. Then we're going to reach the end of this block, and we're going to go back up to the top of the for loop and look at the second word in the complete works of William Shakespeare, which was sonnets. Sonnets, let's see, 7 characters long. 7's longer than 3. So as soon as the got crowned as the longest word in Shakespeare, it got displaced by sonnets. And longest word becomes sonnets, and longest word length becomes 7. What we're going to do, we're just going to go through all 960,000 words in Shakespeare. And a lot of them, it might be a while. It might take a couple words before anything's longer than 7. There's a lot of I's and thes and M's and here's and fors. We'll skip all those because none of them's longer than 7 until we reach something longer. And then it's going to displace sonnets and on and on and on and on and on. Now, if there's any ties, we might actually miss them. I have here longer than. So the next word that's 7 long isn't, 7's not longer than 7. 7's equal to 7. So it's false. The question is 7 greater than 7. That's false. So so any other words that are 7 letters long are not going to make the list. And whatever longest word we find, if there's another word just as long as that, we might miss that. But I don't think that's going to happen. So let's run this code. After all that, after going through all 960,000 words, we're going to have this variable is going to be assigned to the length of the longest word we found. And this variable is going to be assigned to what that word is. So we're going to make it through we're having looped through this 960,000 times. We're going to finally leave the loop when we reach the end of this list, and we're going to print out the longest word we found and the length of that word. What do we get? Tragical, comical, historical, pastoral. That's a word. It comes from Hamlet, and it's like a joke on the idea of a rom-com. He's describing a type of play. Instead of a rom-com, we've got a tragic, comic, historic, pastoralist, which is like the joke being like it's an everything poem. It's just about everything. I'm sure it's probably funny in context. I want to say that that's like a cheating word. Hyphens, that doesn't do it for me. So I'm going to redo this code. We're just going to copy the same code as above. But we're adding another if statement here, right there. We're adding this line, and then we're indenting our sort of action lines. One more dent. So we're doing the same thing as before. Go one by one through every word. If a word's longer than any word we've seen to date, store it and store how long it is and keep going. However, there's this additional twist that if it's longer than any word we've seen, we still have one more question before it gets added. Does it have any hyphens? If it has any hyphens, we're going to disqualify it. So sonnets is 7 characters long, and it doesn't have any hyphens, so it'll get added. But tragical, comical, historical, pastoral, really long, good for it, but it's got hyphens in it, so it's going to get skipped. The only things that are going to get added now to longest word and longest word length are long words without hyphens. So what do we get now? Honorificabilitudinitatibus. Oof. Honorificabilitudinitatibus. Honorificabilitudinitatibus. I think that's right. I think I got it. It's a special word. It's got its own Wikipedia page. Check it out. It translates to the state of being able to achieve honors. Did I know that? No, I looked it up. I had no idea what I was looking at. I learned something. I learned not just any word, a really long word, and the longest word in Shakespeare. Try to pronounce it. Okay. As a special word, did he use it a lot? We encountered the count function. I think we encountered the count function. You put a list. You take a list. You do dot count, and in the parentheses you put something that you know is in the list, and you can ask how many times is it in the list? Does it occur just once? Does it occur all the time? Did he just throw this word around? I learned a big fancy word. I just want to throw it around all the time. So the count on the list of all the words I've ever used for honorificabilitudinatibus, I've already said it like 4 times, so my count would be 4. Was Shakespeare as gaudy as me, or did he have more restraint? Did he use it fewer times? Looks like pretty good restraint. He just used it once. Okay. We can do more. So if statements allow us to filter. We've encountered that. And we can do nested if statements to filter on more than one thing. So I want to know all the words that Shakespeare ever wrote that use all the vowels. There's not that many words, or actually there's more words than you'd think that use all the vowels. Or to put it cleverly, the way I wrote it here. Are there any words in English that use all the vowels? Unquestionably. Which uses all the vowels. Hey. So, how are we going to test for that? We're going to start with an empty list, and we're going to build a list. We're going to use our filters to build a list from scratch. All vowel words, we're going to start off empty. We're going to go word for word through all of Shakespeare. We almost get to read that in English. Word for word in all of Shakespeare. And I'm gonna start off assuming that every word is guilty until proven innocent. I'm going to assume any given word I'm looking at in that list does not have all the vowels. And then if it has an A then it might have an E. If it has an A and an E, then I'll see if it has an I. If it has an A, an E, and an I, then I'll see if it has an O. And if it makes it through this gauntlet, and this gauntlet, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, then it has all the vowels, demonstrably. This last test, I'm not seeing if Y is in the word, because Y is not always a vowel. It's only a vowel at the end of a word. So I'm asking, is the last character of a word equal to Y? If that's true for all these things, then it's true that that word has all the vowels. And I fall out of all these blocks, but I'm still in this block. I'm still in this block. I'm still in the same word. I just established that it has each and every vowel in it. So if that word has all the vowels, if we made it through this whole thing for that single word, then we're going to append that word to all vowel words. Then we'll continue on to the next word, 960,000 times until we've built a list of all the vowel words, of all the all vowel words. So how long is it? How much have we got? Wow. There's just one word. It looks like it was used 3 times. Ill-favoredly. Shakespeare only used one word that uses all the vowels. He didn't even use the word unquestionably. Let's see. So this gets us on to palindromes. Palindromes, once again, are words that are spelled the same backwards as forwards. Racer, mom, race car. I is technically a palindrome because even though it's one character long, it's spelled the same backwards as forwards. So all of the, and what I'm doing here is I'm giving you a function called palindrome. You put a string in it, it'll return true if that word is a palindrome. It'll return false if that word's not a palindrome. I'm sorry, racer is not a palindrome because it's got an E and an A. Mom is, race car is, I is, a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. That's a famous palindrome sentence. With all is not a palindrome. So I should get true, true, false, true, true, false. There it is, true, true, false, true, true, false. Good, so palindrome works, we proved it. We didn't just prove it with positive examples, we also used some negative examples. What I mean to say is, we didn't just put in words we knew were palindromes and hey, it says true, it must work. We also double checked. We put in words that we know aren't palindromes to make sure it says false. We have to approach it from both sides, otherwise we don't really know that it works. Okay, great. So, I'm going to take our original longest word length code and do the exact same thing as before, except that second if statement, instead of if, instead of filtering out the words with hyphens, we're going to filter out words that aren't palindromes. We're only going to include in longest word length, words that also pass the test of being palindromes. So we only had to change one line and we kind of got a lot of power out of code we've used in the past. So let's see, run it. Deified. Deified, that means to make something a god or godlike. Deified happens to be spelled forwards and backward. That's a good one. Everyone who knows about palindromes knows about mom and race car and I. Who knows about deified? That's juicy. And it happens to be the longest palindrome that Shakespeare ever used. That's pretty neat. I mean, is it neat? Is it neat like in the grand scheme of things? Like is it necessary and sufficient for a college education? No. But can you use it to be a jerk to your friends and seem like a know-it-all? Absolutely. Here's how you do it. Don't just like blurt it out. You might have to be patient. Wait 6 months, wait a year. Eventually, the word Shakespeare will come out of someone's mouth. And then you can be kind of casual, oh, hey, I'm really bad at being casual. I'm that guy. Hey, do you want to know what the... Man, I just can't get enough of myself. So, so someone brings up Shakespeare, and then you'll be like, oh, hey, do you want to know the longest palindrome Shakespeare ever used? And they'll be like, kind of like, oh, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, fine, sure. Hey, it's deified. And they'll be like, okay, that's actually pretty cool. I admit it. But it's not that cool. And how'd you even know that? I didn't know you took Shakespeare. You don't take Shakespeare. You took all these weird classes like social science with online data. How'd you know that? And here's your answer. This is the beautiful part. You don't say, oh, my teacher told me. You get to say the truth. I looked. And you did. You downloaded the entire works of William Shakespeare, and you wrote code that goes word for word through every word he ever wrote, and you found the longest palindrome he ever used. So the big takeaway, data is exciting. We can analyze it and do stuff with it. Text is data. The entire web is text. So therefore, the web is exciting data that you can explore and do things with. We went online to Project Gutenberg. We pulled down every word William Shakespeare ever wrote. We analyzed it and learned a bunch of fun stuff. In the process, we used a bunch of Python ideas. We used lists and strings. We used indexing, and we used flow control, for loops and if statements to add logic and to slowly take some relatively simple code and add more and more lines to it and go more and more deeper, add more and more filtering and learn more and more stuff. And once again, kind of bridging the lowest level, the most elementary ideas in Python, the things you learn in the lessons, with bigger ideas or more useful or conceivably useful things. That's the goal of this demo. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much.